The rain came down in sheets that October evening, each drop feeling like ice against my 13-year-old skin. I stood on the sidewalk outside Henderson Middle School, watching the last yellow bus disappear around the corner, its red taillights fading into the gray mist. My backpack grew heavier with each passing minute as the water soaked through the canvas and my tennis shoes squelched with every nervous shift of my feet. Dad was supposed to pick me up at 3:30. It was now 4:47. I'd called him twice from the school's front office, but each time it went straight to voicemail. Mrs. Peterson, the secretary, had offered to call my mom, but I'd shaken my head. Mom was 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, pursuing her acting dreams after the divorce. Dad had fought hard for custody, claiming he wanted to be the responsible parent for once. According to YouTube analytics, 99.5% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Now, as the rain plastered my hair to my forehead, I wondered if this was his idea of responsibility. By 5:15, I was shivering uncontrollably. The school's janitor, Mr. Martinez, found me huddled by the entrance and let me back inside to use the phone one more time. This time, Dad actually answered. "Oh, Emma." Right. School pickup. His voice sounded distant, distracted. I could hear the familiar clink of ice in a glass and the low murmur of a television in the background. "Listen, sweetheart, I'm in the middle of something important." "Why don't you walk home? It's only 2 miles. Build some character, you know." "Dad, it's pouring rain. I don't even have a jacket." "Life's tough sometimes, Emma. Better you learn that now than later. I'll see you when you get home." The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling something cold settle in my stomach that had nothing to do with my wet clothes. Mr. Martinez was watching me with concerned eyes, and I forced a smile. "Everything okay, mija?" "Yeah, my dad's just running late. I'll head home now." The walk home was a nightmare. The rain had turned the usually busy streets into rivers, and cars splashed dirty water across my legs as they passed. I tried to stay under store awnings when I could, but most of the route was residential with no cover. My phone died somewhere around the halfway point, leaving me completely alone with my thoughts. This wasn't the first time Dad had let me down since the custody arrangement began 6 months ago. There was the time he forgot to pick me up from Jessica's birthday party, leaving me the only kid whose parent didn't show. The morning he was too hungover to drive me to my science fair, where I'd spent weeks preparing a presentation on renewable energy. The countless evenings I'd made myself cereal for dinner because he was working late, which usually meant drinks with his buddies from the law firm. But this felt different. This felt deliberate. By the time I stumbled through our front door, my lips were blue and my whole body was shaking. I could hear Dad's voice from the living room, loud and animated. Fantastic opportunity, really. The Henderson account could set us up for years. He stopped mid-sentence as I appeared in the doorway, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor. "Emma! There you are. See? I told you she'd be fine, Rick." Rick Pearson, Dad's law partner, looked uncomfortable. He was a thin man with kind eyes who'd always been nice to me during office visits. Now he stared at my bedraggled appearance with obvious concern. "Jesus, David, she's soaked to the bone. Did you leave her at school in this weather?" Dad waved dismissively, ice clinking in his whiskey glass. "Kids these days are too soft. A little rain never hurt anyone. Builds character, resilience. My father used to make me walk to school uphill both ways in the snow." "That's a cliché, Dad," I said quietly, water still dripping from my hair. "And we live in Arizona. There's no hills." Rick actually smiled at that, but Dad's face darkened. "Don't get smart with me, young lady. Go get changed and do your homework. Mr. Pearson and I are discussing business." I trudged upstairs, leaving a trail of water behind me. As I peeled off my soaked clothes, I could hear Dad's voice growing louder, more boisterous. He was showing off, I realized, playing the tough, no-nonsense father for his business partner. I was just a prop in his performance. That night, I developed a fever. I lay in bed shivering despite the 3 blankets I'd piled on, listening to Dad and Rick's voices drift up from downstairs. They'd moved on from business to old college stories, their laughter echoing through the house. When I called out that I wasn't feeling well, Dad yelled back that I should take some Tylenol and get some sleep. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The divorce had been brutal, with both parents using me as ammunition against each other. Mom had wanted to take me to LA, but Dad had convinced the judge that he could provide stability and structure. He'd painted Mom as a flighty dreamer, while positioning himself as the steady, responsible attorney. The irony wasn't lost on me now. Over the next few days, my fever broke, but something else inside me had crystallized. I started paying closer attention to Dad's patterns, his priorities, his complete inability to put anyone before himself. I began documenting everything: the missed pickups, the forgotten dinners, the times he was too drunk to help with homework. I wrote it all down in a notebook I kept hidden under my mattress. I also started researching. Our house had a computer in Dad's home office, and when he was out, which was often, I'd use it to look up custody laws, parental neglect, and what rights kids had in situations like mine. What I found was both enlightening and infuriating. Apparently, leaving a 13-year-old to walk home alone in a storm could constitute endangerment. The pattern of neglect I'd been documenting could be grounds for revisiting custody arrangements. But I was just a kid. Who would believe me over a respected attorney? The answer came 3 weeks later in the form of Marcus Chen. I was at the public library after school. Dad had forgotten to pick me up again, though this time the weather was clear, when a man in an expensive-looking suit approached my table. He was Asian, probably in his 40s, with alert eyes and an aura of quiet competence that reminded me of the Secret Service agents I'd seen in movies. "Excuse me, are you Emma Patterson?" I looked up from my algebra homework, immediately wary. "Who's asking?" He smiled and sat down across from me, moving with a fluid grace that suggested he was in excellent physical condition. "My name is Marcus Chen. I work for your mother." My heart skipped. "Mom? Is she okay?" "She's fine. Better than fine, actually. Her career has taken off quite dramatically in the past few months. She's landed a recurring role on a major television series and just signed with one of the biggest talent agencies in Hollywood." He paused, studying my face. "She's been trying to contact you, but your father hasn't been returning her calls or responding to her emails." I felt a familiar pang of anger at Dad, mixed with excitement about Mom's success. "I didn't know she'd been trying to reach me." "Dad doesn't really share information." Marcus nodded grimly. "She suspected as much. That's why she hired me." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "I'm a private investigator, among other things. Your mother is concerned about your well-being and asked me to conduct a welfare check." I picked up the card. It was simple, elegant. Marcus Chen, Private Investigations and Personal Security. Below that was a phone number and email address. "She's worried about you, Emma. She says your conversations during your scheduled phone calls have become shorter and more guarded. You've mentioned being hungry, being left alone frequently, and yesterday you mentioned walking home from school in a storm." His eyes were kind but serious. That last part particularly concerned her. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. It was such a relief to have an adult, any adult, actually listen and show concern. Dad says he's teaching me responsibility, building character. And what do you think? It was such a simple question, but no one had asked me what I thought about any of this in months. The words came pouring out. The missed pickups, the forgotten meals, the way Dad prioritized everything and everyone above me. I told him about the rain, about developing a fever, about Dad showing off for his business partner at my expense. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Emma, I want you to know that none of this is your fault. A parent's job is to take care of their child, not the other way around. What you're describing isn't character building, it's neglect. He leaned forward slightly. Your mother wants you to come live with her in California. She's prepared to file for an emergency custody modification, but she needs evidence of the situation here. What kind of evidence? Documentation, photos, witness statements if possible. And he paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Sometimes the best evidence comes from giving someone enough rope to hang themselves with. I wasn't entirely sure what he meant by that, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. In the meantime, Marcus continued, I want you to have my card. If you're ever in a situation where you feel unsafe or abandoned, call me immediately, day or night. I'll be there. But you work for Mom. You're not even supposed to be here, are you? Marcus smiled, and for the first time since he'd sat down, he looked slightly less professional and more human. Your mother loves you very much, Emma. She made a mistake letting your father convince the court that Hollywood wasn't a stable environment for a child. She's not going to make that mistake again. He stood up, straightening his suit jacket. And to answer your question, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Over the next month, I followed Marcus's advice and documented everything. I took photos of empty refrigerators, of homework assignments that never got checked, of the living room floor littered with empty bottles after Dad's client meetings. I wrote down every missed pickup, every forgotten promise, every time I went to bed hungry because Dad was too drunk or too busy to ensure I had dinner. Marcus checked in with me regularly, sometimes in person at the library, sometimes through carefully worded emails that looked like spam to anyone who might be monitoring Dad's computer. He taught me how to use the voice recorder on my phone to capture Dad's more problematic moments, and he gave me a small camera that looked like a pen to document the state of the house. But the real breakthrough came the week before Thanksgiving. Dad had promised to take me shopping for ingredients to make Thanksgiving dinner together. It was going to be our thing, he'd said, a new tradition for our new life as a family. I'd been looking forward to it for days, even going so far as to print out recipes and make a shopping list. When Thursday morning arrived, however, Dad was nowhere to be found. His bed hadn't been slept in, and his car wasn't in the driveway. I called his cell phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. By noon, I was genuinely worried. By 3 p.m., I was angry. By 6 p.m., when Dad finally stumbled through the front door reeking of alcohol and wearing yesterday's clothes, I was furious. Emma! There you are, sweetheart. Sorry I'm a little late. He was slurring slightly, his tie askew and his shirt wrinkled. A little late? Dad, it's Thanksgiving. We were supposed to go shopping this morning. The stores are closed now. Are they? Well, that's unfortunate. He swayed slightly, catching himself against the doorframe. I got caught up with Rick and some clients. Big celebration, very important for the firm. More important than your daughter? Don't be dramatic, Emma. We'll do Thanksgiving next year. That's what you said about my science fair, and my parent-teacher conferences, and my birthday dinner. I could feel tears of rage and disappointment streaming down my face. You don't care about me at all. You just wanted to win against Mom. Dad's face flushed red. "Now you listen here, young lady. I fought for custody because I love you. Because I wanted to give you a stable home, not drag you around Hollywood like some kind of prop. At least in Hollywood, I had a mother who showed up," I screamed. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. My cheek burned, and I stumbled backward, more shocked than hurt. Dad looked immediately horrified, his hand still raised. "Emma, I didn't mean to." But I was already running upstairs, my phone clutched in my hand. I locked my bedroom door and, with shaking fingers, dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the first ring. "Emma? What's wrong?" "He hit me," I whispered, touching my stinging cheek. "Dad came home drunk and we fought about Thanksgiving and he hit me." "Are you hurt? Are you safe right now?" "I'm okay. I'm in my room with the door locked. But Marcus," my voice broke, "I can't do this anymore. I want to go home to Mom." "You will," Marcus said firmly. "I promise you, Emma. You will. Can you take a photo of your cheek? And did you record any of the conversation?" I had. The little recorder Marcus had given me was still running in my pocket, having captured the entire ugly confrontation. I sent him the audio file and a photo of my red, swollen cheek. "Perfect. Now listen to me carefully. I'm going to pick you up tomorrow morning. Tell your father you're spending the day at the library working on a school project. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good. Pack a small bag with essentials, just things you absolutely can't leave behind. Everything else can be replaced." His voice was calm, professional, but I could hear an undertone of controlled anger. "Emma, I want you to know that what happened tonight was not okay. Adults don't hit children, no matter how angry or drunk they are. Your father crossed a line, and there will be consequences." The next morning, Dad was predictably hungover and guilty. He made awkward attempts at apology while I ate cereal for breakfast, the only food left in the house. "Emma, about last night. I shouldn't have. I was under a lot of stress, and I'd been drinking, but that's no excuse." He looked terrible, his eyes bloodshot and his hands shaking slightly. "It won't happen again." "Okay," I said quietly. "I'm going to the library today to work on a history project." "Good. That's good. Education is important." He seemed relieved that I wasn't crying or yelling. "I'll probably be at the office most of the day, but I'll pick up some groceries and we can have a nice dinner together. How does that sound?" It sounded like another promise he wouldn't keep, but I just nodded. "Sounds great, Dad." Marcus picked me up 3 blocks from the house in a sleek black sedan. As I slid into the passenger seat, I noticed he wasn't alone. A woman in a business suit sat in the back seat, a briefcase at her feet and a tablet in her hands. "Emma, this is Janet Rodriguez. She's a family attorney working with your mother's legal team." Janet smiled warmly. "It's nice to meet you, Emma, though I wish it were under better circumstances. I've been reviewing your case, and I want you to know that we're going to get you out of this situation. What happens now?" "Now we go to the courthouse," Marcus said, pulling away from the curb. "Your mother flew in last night. She's meeting us there with her attorney." "Mom's here?" I felt a surge of hope and relief so strong it was almost overwhelming. "She's been here for 2 days, actually," Janet explained. "We wanted to observe your father's behavior without him knowing we were building a case. Marcus has been documenting everything, the missed pickups, the neglect, the unsafe living conditions. The incident last night was unfortunately the final piece we needed." The courthouse was the imposing building downtown, all concrete and glass that reflected the gray November sky. As we walked up the steps, I saw her, Mom, standing by the entrance in a red coat that made her look like a movie star. When she saw me, her face lit up and she ran over, pulling me into the tightest hug I'd received in months. My baby, she whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry. I should never have let this happen. It's okay, Mom. I'm okay. No, it's not okay. But it's going to be. She pulled back to look at my face, her eyes filling with tears when she saw the faint bruise on my cheek. He hit you. Just once. And I think he felt bad about it after. Once is too many times, said a new voice. I turned to see a tall woman in an expensive suit approaching us. I'm Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister and your mother's attorney. We've been preparing for this moment for weeks. The emergency custody hearing was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Dad showed up looking professional and confident, clearly expecting this to be a routine matter that he could charm his way through. His expression changed quickly when he saw Mom sitting at the plaintiff's table with Sarah Chen and realized this was serious. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, listened patiently as Sarah presented our case. She played audio recordings of Dad's neglect, showed photos of the empty refrigerator and messy house, and presented a timeline of missed pickups and forgotten commitments. When she showed the photo of my bruised cheek, Dad actually flinched. Dad's attorney, a nervous younger man who clearly hadn't had time to prepare, tried to argue that these were isolated incidents blown out of proportion by a vindictive ex-wife. But when the judge asked Dad to explain why he'd left his 13-year-old daughter to walk home alone in a rainstorm, his answer sealed his fate. Your Honor, I was teaching her responsibility. Independence. These are important life skills. Mr. Patterson, the judge said dryly, abandoning a child in dangerous weather conditions isn't teaching responsibility. It's endangering a minor. And striking that child when she expresses legitimate concerns about your parenting isn't discipline, it's abuse. The judge awarded temporary custody to Mom immediately, with Dad getting supervised visitation rights pending a full investigation by Child Protective Services. As we left the courthouse, Dad tried to approach me, but Marcus smoothly intercepted him. I don't think that's a good idea right now, Mr. Patterson. She's my daughter, Dad said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. And you had your chance to act like her father, Mom said coldly. You chose to prioritize everything else instead. That afternoon, as Mom and I packed my belongings from the house I'd never have to call home again, I found myself thinking about that rainy October evening that had started everything. At the time, it had felt like the worst thing that could happen to me. Now I realized it had been the catalyst for the best thing, getting my real life back. You know what's funny? I said to Mom as we folded my clothes into suitcases. What's that, sweetheart? Dad was right about one thing. That night in the rain did teach me a lesson. I smiled, thinking about Marcus's business card safely tucked in my wallet, about the documentation that had saved me, about the mother who'd fought to get me back. It taught me that I deserve better, and that sometimes you have to save yourself. 3 months later, I was settled in a beautiful apartment in Santa Monica, just blocks from the beach. Mom's TV show had been picked up for a full season, and she was making more money than she ever had as a struggling actress. More importantly, she was present, helping with homework, cooking dinner, asking about my day, and actually listening to the answers. Marcus had become something between a family friend and a protective older brother. He'd moved to LA permanently, expanding his business to include celebrity security, and he made a point of checking in on us regularly. He taught me self-defense, helped me with my math homework, and somehow managed to always be available when I needed to talk. Dad, meanwhile, had been required to complete parenting classes and alcohol counseling before his visitation rights could be restored. The last I'd heard, he was dating his secretary and seemed more interested in starting fresh than dealing with the mess he'd made of our relationship. I wasn't sure how I felt about that yet, but I knew it was his loss. not mine. The final piece of justice came 6 months after that rainy October evening. Dad's law firm had discovered that his drinking had been affecting his work performance, and several clients had filed complaints about missed meetings and poor representation. Rick Pearson, the same partner who'd witnessed my soggy arrival that night, had quietly pushed Dad out of the firm. Apparently, building character was a lesson that worked both ways. On the anniversary of that terrible night, Mom and I were walking along the Santa Monica Pier when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart clenched, thinking it might be Dad trying to reach out. Instead, it was from Marcus. "Proud of how strong you've been this year. Your courage to speak up changed everything. That's real character building." I showed the message to Mom, who smiled and squeezed my hand. "He's right, you know. What you did took incredible bravery." I looked out at the Pacific Ocean, watching the waves crash against the shore in an endless, powerful rhythm. A light rain had started to fall, but instead of feeling cold and abandoned, I felt cleansed, renewed. "I'm not afraid of the rain anymore," I said. Mom pulled me closer, and we stood there together, letting the gentle drops wash over us as the sun began to set over the water. For the first time in over a year, I felt completely safe, completely loved, and completely home. Dad had been right about one thing. That night in the rain had taught me a lesson, just not the one he'd intended. It had taught me that I had the power to change my own circumstances, that I deserved to be treated with love and respect, and that sometimes the people who claim to be teaching you character are the ones who need to learn what character really means. And most importantly, it had taught me that I would never have to face the storm alone again.